Alright, I'm going to try and make a video here to demonstrate my R154 that I'm going to take out and put up for sale here shortly. I've got 256 Magnum on the way. Most of the parts are here, and I'm going to tear this apart probably right after I make this video. So first I just kind of wanted to show you how the shifter arrangement I've got fits into the bezel on the IS300. So it does sit maybe 3/4 of an inch or an inch back from the way the W55 sits, but the rubber boot fits just fine, and yeah, everything fits just great. So no trouble there. So bear with me. I'm going to mount the camera on my mount, and then we'll go for a drive, and I will show you how it shifts and whatnot. So I'll tell you that when I got this transmission when I bought the car, and it did not go into 4th gear correctly. And I ended up tracking that down as a problem with the way that the shift housing actually fit the transmission. In addition to that, the internal dogs on the 3rd, 4th gear slider, on the 4th gear side, they were all peened over and chewed up. And the input shaft itself, the engagement dogs on it were kind of beat up as well. So the transmission got a new input shaft, got a 3rd, 4th gear slider, new bearings, new synchronizers, the new wedge style, you know what I mean. Got the Marlin crawler billet thrust washer for 1st gear, the Marlin crawler heavy duty rear bearing retainer, and drift motion shift forks for the 1-2 and the 3-4 shift fork. The original shift forks were quite worn, but they weren't broken. And I left the 5th gear shift fork alone because it looked good, and I'm never going to bang into 5th gear, and you probably shouldn't either. So let me just take a quick run around and show you that it goes through the gears nice and everything works like it should. I've read on the internet a lot of people complaining about the way that R154s shift. It's like a dump truck or whatever. It's rough. I really haven't found that to be the case at all. I think it shifts quite smoothly. I have no issue changing up or down just like with 1 or 2 fingers. I haven't found you need to force it at all. So basically the setup that I'm selling is going to be the transmission with the bell housing, the slave cylinder, the drift motion stainless steel clutch line, this shifter arrangement. If you don't like the gooseneck shifter I have that brings it closer to the steering wheel and whatnot, I'm happy to revise it for you. It'll come with the driveshaft, the drift motion stage 3.5 clutch, which I think they say is good for 550 or 600 horsepower, I don't remember. the Drift Motion aluminum flywheel, which got a fresh steel friction insert when I put it together, and a new pilot bearing, the throwout bearing, this shifter arrangement, like I said, ARP bolts to hold the pressure plate onto the flywheel itself. The whole arrangement has about 1,500 miles on it. I haven't kept perfect track, but it is definitely less than 2,000. And as you can see, everything just works very well. This car, by the way, makes right at 450 horsepower at the tires. That was measured on a Dynocom. About 17 pounds of boost on an MP72. It's a pretty basic arrangement. It's just the original VVTi non-turbo engine, but it has the GTE rods and pistons. I know everybody else has 600, 700, 800 horsepower, and that's cool. But frankly, I don't really see how it really does anything that 450 doesn't. This is as much power as the chassis can handle, in my opinion. As you can see, it just goes through the gears like butter. I have no problem with the way that it shifts. Driven a lot of manuals, T5s, T45s, 3650s, T56s, SM465s, etc., etc., etc. A lot of different transmissions. There's nothing wrong with this one. That said, I haven't tried to flat shift this transmission or anything, so I don't know, maybe it's not good for power shifting, flat shifting, whatever you want to call it, but it sticks from one gear to the next, no problem. Even doing it like kind of quickly. I will say this clutch, like I said, Drift Motion stage 3.5. It is a six puck ceramic clutch. The pedal is nice and light. Like, I have a totally stock IS300 as well with its original clutch, and this pedal on this clutch is lighter. However, I guess Drift Motion, the way that they modify the pressure plate, actually decreases the amount of pedal effort required at the expense of decreasing the engagement window. And it's a very narrow engagement point, and then the way that ceramic grabs is aggressive, so it takes some getting used to and some practice to be able to drive it well. Really looking forward to my new McLeod RXT that is supposed to be really, really nice, just as for a street car. I hope that you can get a sense from this video of how buttery this transmission goes from gear to gear. It just doesn't require you to force it around at all. It's very nice. will say I spent a good bit of time getting this shifter and the shifter housing set up just right, so maybe there's something to do with that. Speaking of which, and you'll see pictures of this when I have it all apart, but this is not your regular arrangement where they have taken the Mark III shift housing and then chopped it and welded it and extended it and whatnot. That's not how this one's done. This is the shift housing out of, I believe, the last year of the Soarer, the Toyota, the JDM Soarer that had the R154 available. And I think it's I know that it's the JZX 110 chassis. And they did the shift housing differently on that package, where instead of having a little arm bolted onto the internal shift rail of the transmission, they have a shaft inside the shift housing that's guided on linear bearings. And it really makes the shifter just run smooth. I don't know. This is my first R154. I guess I don't have that much experience. But it just surprises me, all of the internet complaints about how terrible R154 shift. And this one's quite good. About as hard as I ever shifted. It's just a street car. It's fun to buzz around in. 450 horsepower. Motivates this car pretty well. That's a fun little S-turn there. I've actually never been through here before. Very careful when I reassembled the transmission. It got new seals, of course, but I was very careful to make sure that I created an excellent seal between the cases and the mid plate so that there wouldn't be any leaks, and it doesn't leak a drop from any orifice. No leaks whatsoever. You can see it changes up, changes down, goes through the gears with no drama, nothing weird, just works right. some of the forums I've read where people complain about R154's grind going into reverse. This one doesn't do that at all. However, I suspect that most of the people reporting that issue maybe don't understand how the R154 reverse is laid out. It's just a spur gear sitting on its own shaft, and when you physically put the gear stick into reverse, you are sliding that spur gear into mesh with a mating spur gear on the counter shaft, and then spur gear teeth that are machined into the outside diameter of the first and second gear slider. So my point is that the reverse idler gear has to be slid into place, and if any of the transmission parts are spinning while you try to do that, it's going to grind. There's no synchronizer on reverse or anything like that. So when you go for reverse, you should never do that while the vehicle is moving, and you should step on the clutch and give it an instant, like, a second or so, or just push the gear stick against any forward gear, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, doesn't matter, and that'll bring the whole counter shaft and output shaft to a stop. And then, you can go for reverse and it'll just slide right in there like nothing. Anyways, whoever buys this setup, I think they'll be pretty happy. It's a very complete arrangement with all the parts you're going to need, and you can have some confidence that somebody that wasn't a dipshit put it together and got it all working right, and as you can see from this video, it worked just like it should. I hate the way other people drive. Alright, well, thank you for watching, and buy my transmission.